the giveaway. It's just the CIRCE rules. Show of hands, how many people here, this is their first CIRCE-related event ever? All right, there's a few new people here. That's wonderful. Thank you for coming. A little bit about the CIRCE Institute. We don't just do classical job fairs, believe it or not, although this is one thing that we offer. We are in a company that's been around since really the beginning of the classical renewal. Andrew Kern, our founder, invented classical education. But it's been really amazing, and we are so blessed to be able to participate in this ever-growing movement and renewal. We offer a teacher training program, the apprenticeship, which you can use in conjunction with the Masters in Classical Education at Belmont Abbey, which is an incredible opportunity. We offer consulting for schools. We publish books and curriculum, as you see out there. And then this coming week is actually our annual curriculum sale. So if you're looking for lost tools or rhetoric program, you can buy it. And we are also very excited to launch our new grammar curriculum for grades 1 through 8 titled The Tapestry, Literature and Language, which is a poetic knowledge approach to grammar. So, and language arts. So very beautiful, excited to launch that. We also do online classes and courses, and we also do events. So in July, we will be in Charleston, South Carolina for our national conference, which is an incredible event if you've never made it. We also do seasonal conferences as well. So in the fall, we'll be in Dallas. Excited for that conference as well. So if you want to make it to one of those, that's a great teacher development, professional development, and then also, of course, we hope to continue to do this and offer it every year. So thank you all so much for being here. We're just really honored. And again, thank you to Belmont Abbey College for hosting us. I'm going to introduce our speaker in a second, but I would like to do some giveaways first. First up, A Classical Guide to Narration by Jason Barney, a beautiful book about the beautiful pedagogical practice of narration and how to do it very practically. Mary Judah LeBlanc. All right. Thank you. She's pregnant. Don't walk all the way over here. He can do it. Next up, Classical Education, The Movement Sweeping America by Dr. Jean Edward Veith and Andrew Kern. Whoa. You can get it signed by the guy himself. Daniel Lee. Daniel Lee. Ooh. I secretly love when this happens. He gets to pull in again. Travis Copeland. Oh, what a nice guy. Next up, he talked about it this morning and wanted to give one away, which is very generous of him. The new book by Robert Bortons, Woke and Weaponized. Atari Elson. A newer book by Mandy Girth, Thoroughness and Charm, a great practical guide to implementing classical education practices in the classroom. Tyler Van Fossen. Just left. Sorry, Tyler. Sorry, not sorry. Just kidding. Jonathan Enriquez. This is why you don't leave early, guys. Yeah, we're going to blacklist these people. I need to take those out. Sorry, that was Tyler again. Rebecca Posky. Wow, this has never happened. Sorry. This is so fun. Chasten Hart. He was right here. I'm just going to go this way now. Jesse Connor. Yay! Thank you for being here. Okay, that's the last one. So, excited to introduce Eric Warren. He is the director of the National Hybrid Schools Project at Kennesaw State University. Just a brilliant guy, a good friend of the Institute, and I was told I have to say this, coolest dad ever. Please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you, Alex. So while I get my stuff out, I'll just tell you that I host conferences too, and we do giveaways, and I've adopted the same rule that if you're not here, you don't win. And one time, my own priest came to my conference and stepped out of the room and was denied the prize forever because of that. So score that however you want to for me. Okay, it's been a minute, but I've done some long distance running over the years. And it ends up being mostly half marathons in Atlanta. And there are moments for me around like mile 10 where I think to myself, what have I done? Like why did I ever sign up for this? If you've heard the term runner's high, I've never experienced that in my entire life. And in the Atlanta marathon, half marathon, it's particularly cruel because it's in the city. And so towards the end, you will turn a corner and then run up a hill, and then turn a corner and run up another hill until you get to the end, right? So somewhere about mile 12, this question, what have I done to myself, becomes really sharp because near the finish line, there are always guys who are trying to hand you beers and congratulations. I'm trying not to die, so I'm angry at myself, I'm angry at him. And so the question then becomes, why am I doing this? Is it healthy? Is it the discipline? Is it the t-shirt? Probably all those things, but not equally, right? And I think classical education can be a little bit like that. Everybody agrees that it's good, but when you ask what matters most about it and in what order, because there is an order to what we like about it, the answers start to diverge a little bit. So this is a question that I've been interested in. Let me tell you why a little bit. So after graduate school, I had worked for the governor's office in Georgia for a few years. I left that and I started as a professor in a conventional teacher prep program for a local college, not Kennesaw. But after a couple semesters, I just felt like I was doing something wrong. Everything I was talking about in terms of curriculum and pedagogy and assessment just felt wrong, and I didn't know why. And somehow I came across this little 40-page book by Christopher Perrin called something like A Brief Introduction to Classical Education. They've republished it as something else. But I read that and I was like, oh, everything changed, right? The scales fell away. I understood what was making me uncomfortable. And I realized that I was talking about schooling almost entirely in terms of outcomes, technocracy, and almost never in terms of personal formation, right? So I've always done work on school choice. Sorry, Robert. And now most of my work involves hybrid schools and micro schools. I also helped start a classical high school program at a hybrid school in Atlanta. And I think this renewal is increasingly important to the country. But outside of classical education circles, and even in it, this question comes up a lot. What is classical education? So I'm going to talk today about some empirical work, some new empirical work that I've done on how people think about classical education and why they like it. There will be a little bit of math, or just numbers anyway. But don't think of this as me trying to optimize for some aspect of classical education. Don't think of it as me trying to prove anything about it. The point's just kind of to take a different sort of look at what people involved in classical schools around the country say they're doing and what they say they want from this kind of education. right? So this isn't just about numbers, it's about sort of making sense of a conversation that a lot of you have lived, right? In recent years, people have debated what classical education means, right? Is it a civic project? Is it political? Is it partisan? I don't think so, but that's why we should be more precise in what we're talking about. And I hope this talk will shed some light on those priorities. So I've come to these CIRCE conferences here the past couple of years to present papers in what has become a series of papers I've been writing, which look at what classical education means to the people who are actually involved in it. So not to make arguments, but to do some empirical work and learn what parents, teachers, and administrators really say they're doing and what they want. So across these three studies, these people show a lot of agreement about what they value the most, but they tend to leave those values pretty implicit. So the papers form a story, so I'll briefly go over the first two and then spend most of my time on the new one and then finish with some thoughts on the whole thing. So not to spoil it, but my overall thesis is going to be that based on the data that I have, classical education is not a project for changing the world, but for forming people who can govern themselves within it, whatever that looks like. All right. So the first paper was simple. Oops. This clicker is not, though. Okay. So the first paper just asked, do classical schools know what they are? Right? So for this one, I surveyed parents, and I wanted to get into some specifics about how they felt classical education was playing out in their schools. So first, I asked these parents, to what extent do you feel the school is promoting itself as classical to current and prospective families? Okay. Oh, I think it's catching up to me. There. All right. So you can see everybody says it is. They're selling it to themselves as a classical school. They like being called classical schools. That's selling to people. So then I asked them, okay, does your school define what that means? And you can see that I'm throwing myself off here. All right. How about this? How about I just tell you when to hit the button? Go back. I'm burning all my slides here. One more. One more. Okay, so this is, does your school define what classical education is? Right, so you can see everybody still agrees, but the intensity drops a little bit. They're less confident that they are actually defining what classical education is. Okay, so the next question was about teachers and students, right? So first I asked these parents, do the teachers describe the school as being classical in their assignments and how they communicate with you in class discussions? So go ahead. So it drops again, right? They're less confident that that's happening. And then the last question was, to what extent would students say they attend a classical school? So go ahead. And it drops again, right? 2/3 say that that's true, right? So these parents say that their schools are promoting classical education. They're less confident about what that means. And then it doesn't seem to be trickling down to students or to teachers and students, right? I don't think that's hypocrisy, and I don't think it's failure. It's just what happens when a movement grows faster than its shared vocabulary is ready for, right? So if that term is widely embraced, what do people think it's for? That was the question for paper 2. So next slide. In this paper, I asked parents, teachers, and administrators at classical schools 2 things, right? First, how do you define classical education? And second, what's the point of classical education? So on the first one, I offered several published definitions of classical education. The ones that were most preferred were from Hillsdale, Classical Academic Press, and CIRCE. So congratulations to you as applicable. But then I asked these people to rate some academic and life outcomes that they hope their kids would get from a classical education. So here are the lists, okay? And I intentionally included some items that sounded more traditional and some that sounded more modern. Right, and my thinking was they'll all pick the traditional sounding ones, right? But instead of just giving these lists and asking them to say which items they liked, I did something called a max diff analysis, which is usually used in marketing research, but my center at Kennesaw State has started to apply it to education policy questions too. So this works by forcing trade-offs, right? People see a small set of options that are randomly given to them at a time, and they choose what matters most and least. So over several rounds, this reveals their priorities, right? Not just what they approve of, but what they prefer. So if you could hit the next one. So they would see something like this over and over again, different versions. So here are the numbers. In short, the scores range from -100 to +100. I'm prepping you so you don't get lost on the next slides. The closer to +100, it means that the item was chosen as most important more often. Closer to -100 means it was chosen as least important more often. Okay? So here are the actual results. Okay? For academic outcomes, the traditional ones were chosen a little more often, right? But then certain things like academic skills, basic academic skills was scored really high. I expected individuality and self-expression to be least popular, but maybe not that strongly. But you could see virtue, which I didn't define, was easily the most popular outcome. Right? Remember that virtue finding. You'll also see that religion got a -3. Remember that one too. Okay, so go to the next slide. Right, on these life outcomes, having a job, religious involvement were the most popular. Delaying marriage and children was the most unpopular by a lot, which gives us maybe some hope that the future will exist. But remember, these are all classical school people, and almost all these are religious schools, right? So on the last slide, religion was not only not preferred, but because it was negative, it was actually picked as least popular more often than not, right? But then religious involvement is really popular. Virtue is the highest rated item in the whole survey, right? So what's going on? At that point, the data were raising a real question. What do these respondents mean by virtue if it's not religious instruction and it's not, you'll see voting is pretty low too, it's not civic participation, what is virtue? So what's the next slide, right? Someone should ask this question more often, right? What is virtue? So this was another survey, this last paper, of a much larger sample of the same kind of people, parents, teachers, and administrators in classical schools. You're all getting a preview because I haven't actually written this paper yet. But I asked these people about virtue in 2 ways, so go ahead. First, I had a list of Aristotelian-style virtues, which you can see. I asked about each one with 3 different framings: moral, intellectual, and civic. So next slide. You'll see, for courage, for example, the respondents over the course of the survey would have seen 3 statements related to courage framed in 3 different ways. And they were asked to rate each one from very important, 1 point, to not important, 4 points. Right? So here's how it shook out. If we bring all the moral questions together, right, and all the intellectual and all the civic, go back. It shakes out like this, right? So you can see a score between 1 and 2 means they rated everything somewhere between somewhat important to very important, right? So they like all of these things. But we can start to see kind of an order here, right? The moral questions as a group were more preferred than the intellectual and then the civic, right? And then among the individual virtues, they preferred truthfulness the most, and humor was the least important thing to these people. Okay, very serious crowd. Although they still said it was important, right? Okay, so this is where so they're all important, right? Which tells you something, but we want to know like how that doesn't really help us define what they mean by virtue, right? So this is where the second analysis comes in. So I conducted another MaxDiff where I asked the respondents to prioritize these virtues against each other, right? Same method as paper 2, and so this is what they told me. Next slide. So you can see here are the numbers for these statements when they were paired up and forced to choose, right? So these if you just look at the numbers, these shake out into 3 pretty distinct tiers, right? So hit the next slide, right? We've got a group that is kind of inward facing, right? Truth, courage, self-control, judgment. Another group that has to do with forgiveness, relationships, helping other people. And then the most public-facing ones, right? Generosity, humility about your successes, humor were the least preferred. So this helps solve the virtue versus religion puzzle a little bit, right? What looked like a contradiction in earlier results actually turns out to be just a hierarchy, right? That's actually a great and clear signal. People are ordering their priorities, right? It's important to put things in the right order, right? That's a natural phenomenon, and it shows up in the response data. And we know, right? Hierarchies are important, right? Hierarchies are celestial. In hell, all are equal. But this also told me a lot about what question I was actually asking, right? So I thought I was asking all these people, what do we mean by classical education? I think what I ended up learning is the next slide, well, this slide, right? What kind of soul does this education call for? Lots of current debates about education assume that classical education has to either justify itself morally or define itself kind of defensively, but I'm not convinced of that, right? The next slide tells us, right? Uncle Screwtape warns us, right? The enemy, our friend, wants us to be concerned with what we do. The devil's business is to keep us thinking about what will happen to us, right? So a lot of our contemporary anxiety about education lives right there, right? Concerns with outcome, with signaling, with reputational effects, with judgment from other people. Classical education at its best resists all that, right? It just trains people to act rightly without constantly calculating what those actions will say about them, right? I do exist and I work in an economics department, so I come across business books pretty often, and more than 99.9% of popular business books are terrible. But once in a while, somebody will have a good insight, right? So there's a book, a business book from a few years ago titled Obliquity that makes a good argument, right? The author says that if you want to maximize something like shareholder value, the worst thing you can do is focus directly on shareholder value, right? That leads to short-term thinking, to corner cutting, to cheating sometimes. He literally writes, the best way for a business to maximize profits is to not seek to maximize profits, right? So obviously you have to lock in sometimes and accomplish things. So this isn't like a natural law or something. But if you focus on building excellent products that genuinely serve people, all these other outcomes will take care of themselves. More recently, another productivity writer put it even more bluntly. So his theory that I think is great is this one: goals are for losers, right? Which sounds offensive at first, right? But here's what he means, right? If your goal is to lose 20 pounds, then every day that you wake up having not lost 20 pounds, you are, by definition, a failure, right? You're a loser. So what you want is not a goal, but a system to accomplish something, right? So if your system is well-directed and your system is eat carefully and exercise daily, then every day that you follow that system, you've succeeded. And over time, the weight will come off on its own without you even thinking about it. Right? So the focus shifts from outcomes to formation, right? If classical education is always explaining itself about what's going to happen, it's already thinking too much about what will happen to it. I think all this helps interpret my findings over these papers. You can go to the next slide, because that's kind of mean to leave up there. Virtue is not replacing religion, right? It's just being defined as more of an interior project by classical school people, right? In other words, virtue is understood primarily as moral self-governance, not public signaling. So religious practice or involvement, and I think religion on the first round of questions, and civic life like voting are good, but they're kind of downstream expressions of a formed character, right? They're seen as outcomes of formation, not substitutes for it. So I think the takeaway message for school leaders is, your schools are actually clearer about their ends than you might realize, but maybe less explicit than they need to be. So school leaders should ask themselves, which virtues are really foundational to us, and which are also important but kind of downstream of those. And then they should tell everybody that, right? Faculty formation should reflect that hierarchy. Messaging to parents should reflect that. The school mission has to be articulated and then sold to faculty and families over and over and over again. So my data suggests you already know what you're trying to form, and your people agree with you implicitly, but hardly anybody says it out loud quite that way, or at least not very often. The core message for potential classical school teachers is that classical teaching is not primarily about producing civic actors. It's not about rocking the vote, right? I'm a 90s kid, so it's not about polished personalities. You're not trying to change the world. It's about forming morally reliable, self-governing individual people. Right? I think I've heard Andrew say this. If not, it sounds like something he would say. That everybody's story is the story of the prodigal son, right? And it comes on its own timeline, but all the problems in the world are individual problems. So the public outcomes come later and not always on a schedule. So if you're drawn to classical education because you care about truthfulness, about judgment and self-command more than visibility or prestige, then you're in the right place, right? So some of these public debates about classical education ask things like, what is this project? Is it Christian? Is it political? What my data, I think, are suggesting is that this is a community that has really rapidly grown and is still learning a shared vocabulary to talk about it all, right? So as the movement continues to grow with charter schools, different kinds of hybrid schools and micro schools, we should remember that classical teaching is not primarily about producing impressive-looking graduates, shaping students for applause. It's not really a strategy for changing the world or correcting social narratives. It's about forming morally reliable, self-governing people. And if we do that, the world changing will all take care of itself, right? So let me just end by coming back to where I started, right? When you're 10 miles into a half marathon and you're questioning lots of your life decisions and you're struggling, right? And you're asking yourself, why did I sign up for this? The answer is never just one thing, right? It's not just health. It's not just discipline. It's not just the t-shirt. It's a system you've chosen to improve your life, right? Classical education is kind of like this. People don't stay in it because of one outcome. They stay because over time it forms a certain kind of person. What my data suggests is that beneath all of our debates and disagreements over terms, most of us understand what kind of person that is. Someone who tells the truth, someone who governs himself, someone who thinks carefully, someone who stands up when it's difficult. That's why saying goals are for losers is relevant here. Classical education isn't a strategy for producing social outcomes. It's a system for forming souls. It's a set of habits, and it's a hierarchy of higher and lower goods, better and worse loves. If we don't talk about that order, then this amorphous idea of virtue will dissolve into preferences, and the renewal will lose its character because everyone will just decide for themselves what that means, right? Which is unfortunate, right? Hierarchies are celestial, and hell all are equal, right? So classical education works only if we remember that its task is not to justify itself to the age, but to shape souls capable of standing up in it. That's what I mean by naming what we love, right? If we love truth more than images, we love character more than recognition, we love formation more than performances, if we're clear about all of those loves, then all the rest of it will just fall into place. Thank you. All right. I'm unsure what Alec wants me to do next. We have like 5 minutes if we want questions. Or, yeah. If not, yeah. Winston.
How has your research been accepted by people in the academy, like outside the classical education circle?
So the first two papers are in the process of being published at economics journals. But they're very specific ones, right? So the ones that will accept work that has to do with character. This is actually a problem in the academy, is that empirical work that's focused on religion or social issues often feels kind of icky to editorial boards, right? So you kind of have to pick your spots. So the first two have been accepted though, and the third one hasn't because it's not written yet. So, yeah. Was there somebody else up here? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a wide range still, right? Because we've got. So it's kind of what I ended with, right? People who can put these things in order and work on their own, being truthful, being confident and courageous, and then you can go vote, right? You don't vote first, right? Yeah, Josh.
Did you have any other findings from your surveys that would make it into today's talk?
Yeah, they're all a little bit different, right? In the third one, I actually asked some open-ended questions too, about things that I missed or how else would you talk about this, and I got 3 interesting responses. One was, how dare you pit the virtues against each other, right? One was, no, virtue's great, but you have to connect it to religion, right? And then the other one that came up over again were people literally typed in the words faith, hope, and charity, right, as answers. Yeah. And so that's most of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What has been the response of those within classical education? Has there been a range of responses that are enthusiastic about the findings, those not really wanting to change the status quo?
The hardest thing, honestly, is getting people to play ball, right? So I sent out a survey from a large state university, and I think a lot of classical schools are skeptical that I am not an enemy, right? When they hear the findings, they're like, oh, that makes sense, right? This at least it rings true to me, you know. So I'll keep talking about it. Yeah.
What finding was most surprising to you?
The most surprising thing to me was, so I intentionally kind of rigged some of the questions to be on the second paper in terms of here are things that I think classical people will like and things that they won't like. So I included in the max diff for that one things like appreciation for Western civilization, appreciation for fine arts, college and career readiness, right? Those are the two ends, right? And honestly, appreciation for Western civilization didn't score that high among classical school people, and neither did fine and performing arts. And they were more into basic reading and writing skills than I thought they would be. So that was kind of interesting. That didn't quite shake out the way I thought it would. Yeah. I mean, the most surprising thing was the religion part, which I think I've figured out. But yeah.
Well, I was curious, what's the difference in your life between the relation virtues and public-facing virtues?
I think the relational ones are kind of more like one-to-one, and the public-facing ones are more I'm showing myself as generous or funny or whatever. Yeah, like larger groups. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and take just a couple minutes. I think we have 3 minutes to use the restroom, get some water, or whatever, and then we'll come back for the panel. Thank you. Was that one of the slides on there?
It was one of the slides I had here.
Oh, okay. Okay, figure that out. I'll ask.
Yeah.
I need to make one point.
Okay. I'll sit right here. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. If you have questions, turn them in. If you want to write them as the panel is happening, that's also fine. We can take questions that way as well. But please give your questions. It will be great. They love questions. Panelists love questions. It's in their nature. Carrie Eben, where are you? What's the password? Okay, so thank you. It's not there yet, but there will be a slide that has a book. Carrie Eben wrote it with Dr. Christopher Perrin, I believe. There's a QR code on that panel. If you want to buy it, you can scan it with your AI bot in your phone, and then go to the website, type in the password, not password, what are this called? Codes. Discount codes. Not a password. And the good teacher? The good.
Sorry, the password is good teacher 25.
Good teacher 25. And you get 100% discount? 25% discount. All caps. Okay. It'll be up there at some point. The technology masters over there are getting her done. Okay. Where are our panelists? There's one. I'm going to invite our panelists to come up. There's two. There's three. Here's Andrew Kern. I don't need to be here anymore. Thank you so much. Please welcome the panelists to the stage.
Oh, hello, Katerina. Nice to see you. I didn't. Hello, Oliver.
You've got the smallest panels.
See you later. We all really came to see Oliver, didn't we? Now I have to control my heart and turn to the panel and say hi. It's good to see you, ladies. We're going to talk in this session more about pedagogy. And so for the introductions, I would like each of you to say your name, your role, and why you love teaching.
My name is Kristen Rudd. My role is former homeschool mom, grandma to be, and yes. And I run my own business. I teach online classes, and I do one-on-one writing tutoring with middle school and high school students, and I also help people with their college application essays, so do quite a few things. Why I love teaching? I love seeing that spark when someone like understands something and gets it. and they like make it their own, and they actually finally figure out how to do something, and just kind of see them come alive with something. I think that's one of the best things about teaching.
My name is Carrie Eben, and I've had many roles. I've been a classical school teacher. I am a founding board member of a classical school in Northwest Arkansas, where I'm from. I am a student finishing up my PhD. I've been shout out to Faulkner. I've been did I say homeschool mom? Homeschool mom for 10 years with CC, and right now I'm a classical education consultant. I'm a CIRCE head mentor, part of the CIRCE apprenticeship program. Highly, highly recommend it. And apparently an author now, so that's great.
Wait.
Yes.
Why do you love teaching?
Oh, why do I love teaching? I really love learning. So I love the learning process, and I am in a PhD program. I really have no huge goal at the end of it except that it's my own transformation. I just love learning. And I couldn't have said that until recently, that learning is about my own transformation and knowing who I am and who I am in relationship to my Creator. So that's why, and I love sharing that with other people.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Katarina Hamilton. I'm the director of curriculum at the CIRCE Institute. I was a teacher for about 15 years, and now this is actually my first year not teaching, which I do teach in my dreams. Literally, I'll wake up and be like, oh, I miss it. But I have a pupil over there who I'm holding out hope to be an excellent student one day. I love teaching because I love the kids. It's kind of cliche, but I do. And I love watching great ideas and great texts transform students. I love seeing, they've said it, right? It's the learning, it's the spark, it's watching life truly happen, and that's what we see in the classroom is like a fullness of life, and that's why I do it. That's why I love it.
Thank you. The next question is, have you ever been run over by a metaphor? And if so, what happened?
I wonder who wrote that question. That's a joke question. Give us a real question.
Give me a metaphor for pedagogy.
Just to clarify, a metaphor for pedagogy, not a metaphor for learning.
Right, for teaching.
Metaphor for teaching.
I don't know why you do this to us. Cooking. It's like cooking.
Okay.
Not baking, because with baking you have to be really precise, right? Because if you bake and you screw it up, like that's it, right? But cooking, you can make a lot of mistakes, but if you trust the process, it might still come out right. And even if you screw it up, you just add a little salt, it'll be fine.
I like it.
She stole mine. No, just kidding.
I'm still thinking, but
Metaphors are like cooking. You really don't want to be too precise about it.
I've used that metaphor, actually. You just beat me to it, but that is a really good metaphor. So in that vein, I would say it's like jazz.
Ooh.
Because there's a lot of improvisation that goes on. There is an underlying truth. So when you're playing jazz, you have to know your chords and you have to know your scales, but you are kind of reading the room and you're listening and you're being attentive to your students, but it's usually never the same. So once it's wrong, if you make a mistake once, it's wrong. If you make a mistake twice, it's jazz.
All right.
I love
That's
that.
good.
I don't know how universal this metaphor is, but it works for me, so maybe it'll work for somebody else. Teaching is like painting. at the beginning, you have some sense of what you want the painting to look like. But if you force the painting to look like that in the end, it's just tyranny. You're lording yourself over the work. The painting has to have a life of its own, and it's going to surprise you sometimes. And then if you're a good artist, you're going to sit back and let the painting do that and respond to it with welcome hospitality and say, all right, let's go with that. The painting wants to be something else that I didn't expect. And then it's more beautiful. And it couldn't have been that without the initial vision. The teacher had to have some sense, or the artist had to have some sense of what it would be. But they couldn't force that like a tyrant.
Thank you. I'm going to ask some questions that were asked this morning, but I want to get a teacher perspective this time. The first one is, how do you handle special needs, either gifted students or students with disabilities?
Well, I'll go ahead. So my daughter has dyslexia and ADHD, which we kind of figured out. We figured out the dyslexia part early on in elementary, and teaching her to read was special. And so just constantly finding strategies that work, constantly, figuring out, it's my job to figure out if that's not working, what do I need to do to change what I'm doing? I tutor a great variety of students I've had public school kids, private school kids, homeschooled kids, American kids, British kids. And I have some students that are very high achieving, so they're on that end of the high performing. And then I have students who are severely autistic that I teach. I don't have any special education training, but we know how to teach well, and good teaching is good teaching. Everybody does learn the same. And it's a lot of figuring out what works and having a lot of patience. And Simply Classical is a great resource. I've read that a couple of times. But I think I really liked what was said this morning's panel. I don't know if you were here, but just that we do owe it to all students to have a classical education the best that we can give it to them. And so just all the strategies I use for my high achieving students are the exact same strategies I use for my special ed kids, just at a very different pace, right? Very different approach. But figuring that out and working with the parents especially, that you have a lot of trust as a teacher with the parents.
I guess I have to agree with you. We don't get to be spicy here. I do agree that liberal arts is. I think everybody has the capacity to participate in the great conversation. As much as they're capable of participating. And I think we need to invite as many people as we can. And I'm a little dismayed by a lot of classical schools who, just tout the fact that they're just harder than everybody else, or more special, or more elite. And I think that education and being able to be led to know truth and to discover and be attentive to things that are beautiful is just part of being human. So fundamentally, I believe that all humans, deserve an opportunity to do that wherever they are. And so for me, the word is flexible. And like Kristen, I have to be flexible with all of my students because everyone's different. No one's the same. And so just finding things that work for students. There are fundamentally, again, like jazz, there's fundamental things that make good music, and that's part of the beauty and the art of it. But then there's improvisation that we need based on the student, your audience, who you are. And I really think, in order to help students be the best that they can be, and not just some standard that somebody somewhere made, we really have to look at assessment and how we are assessing students, because I think that's kind of where we fall short, is we start with assessment and then everything else kind of falls into place underneath, and we need to look at that the other way around.
I wonder to what extent this question presupposes some false premises. And that we have adopted from modern education. One of those is, if we think about classical education and the goals, the ability to see truth, goodness, and beauty ultimately, and to become like that, are there any humans who are hampered in that? I don't think there are, but if they are, then they're probably the ones who are special needs, not the ones who struggle to memorize information or have reading comprehension. So that would be my first question. If we're categorizing students by struggling and kind of in the average and excelling, what's our framework? At what are they struggling? Is it things that we seek in classical education, or is it things we've adopted from contemporary education that we say, okay, here are the measurable things that we can actually assess, therefore we will measure our students by those things. So I think that could potentially be a problematic framework right off the bat. And then the other is, again, that framework of you've got a large class who's supposed to kind of be in this middle area, and then you've got a few outliers at the top and a few outliers at the bottom. That's kind of what we're taught should happen in a classroom, and if your classroom doesn't fall out that way, then you've done something improper as a teacher in structuring your class. That's the basic framework. I challenge that as well. I mean, Carrie mentioned, I think quite brilliantly, that you have to treat each child as an individual anyway. So if we have small enough classrooms, and that's a big if, and I think if you're looking to become a teacher, you should insist on that in the schools that you go to, that there are small enough classrooms, that you can know each student and know what each student needs in order to learn. So if one student doesn't do well on a test, it's not, okay, well, let's just make them take it again and then hope they do better. It's, you need to know that student well enough to know, is something going on at home that's making them not do well, or are they having a fight with their best friend? Like, what is actually happening here? Anyway, I'm going on and I don't need to. But all I'm trying to say is we need to treat each child like an individual, and classroom size is a big issue. And that, again, is where the classical model is just accepting a lot from modern education, and I think we really need to challenge that.
Follow-up question, what do you think leads to the obsession with specialized methods? Katerina, you were touching on that, but I want to let you, any of you, run with it.
Well, I mean, it's the end goals, right? If we think that education is for job training, then all of a sudden you introduce all this confusion, right? Because, okay, well, what are the criteria that they need in order to go on to the next level? How are we going to assess our students? And then we start to view students through this extremely limited lens, and through that lens, we want predictable outcomes. And so to have predictable outcomes, you have to have a usable method that's going to be, if I do X, Y, and Z, this is the result that I see in my student. And then if the student is that, well, I know it's because the method wasn't applied properly, right? We want the guarantee that students will have become whatever end result we're seeking. And so then in teacher training schools and in standard pedagogy, we think, well, let's just find the perfect method. And it just doesn't exist. It doesn't. And there's no guarantee that our students are going to become what we predetermine. And like I mentioned with my metaphor, they probably shouldn't, right? Each child should co-work. It's the teacher and the Holy Spirit and the child who hopefully are all together communally determining what this education is going to bring about in that child. And that is a mystery that modern education will never make space for.
Would you repeat your question one more time?
Yeah, what do you think, what leads to the obsession that we have with specialized methods? If there's special needs at the higher end or the lower end, why do we get obsessed about methods to deal with them?
I love it. I think it's just a misunderstanding of what the purpose of education is. And I think, which has led to, like what you said, Katerina, just these different specialized outcomes of what we think a student or a child should be able to do at different ages and stages of their life, and that's not the purpose of education. So I think we have to go back to what is the purpose of education fundamentally, and I think there's a difference between that and modern progressive education and classical education. We talk about it all the time in classical education. I don't think we always do it.
I mean, I don't have much more to add to that, what y'all have said, but I think, I've never worked in a public school, but I have a lot of friends who do, and they talk all the time about how special education is just broken, just absolutely broken in the public schools. And I live in the Raleigh area, and there are so many people who homeschool in that area because their kids are just not getting their needs met. But if we're going to talk about what the purpose of education is, the question we always ask, right, Lucy, is what is a human for? You always have to go back to, like, what does it mean to be human? Why, what is a human? What is it to educate a human? So I don't really have anything else to add, though. There is, so Dr. Amy Richards of Eastern University has a new book out. I'm not sure who's published it. Is it CAP? I think Classical Academic Press has published it. I don't know the title, but she's done a lot of research on how do we educate children with special needs, the difference in human dignity that we have, and she's got a new book out that's all about that. So that's another resource as well.
So this morning, one of the questions was, what is a human, and how does he become perfect? I think that's fitting. How would you answer that?
Why didn't I get these questions beforehand? That is, what is a human? A human, I think that's the fundamental difference between, modern progressive education and really Christian education is how do we see a human? And, human is somebody, is a person who is made in the image of God, somebody that is been made in his likeness and is a little lower than the angels.
I think there's a great mystery in what it is to be human, and I don't want to. This sounds like a cop-out. I don't want to answer it because to do so would be to reduce all that we are, and it would make it seem like we'd settled the question. And that's the problem with the proposition. It feels complete, and it never is. We're the image of God, right? What is a human? It's little Oliver up there. He's the fullness of humanity. I mean, and then he's not, right? Like it's both. We are and we aren't. And it's sacred. It's holy, and it should be viewed that way. And I think if we think we know what humans are, we run the risk of thinking we know a human, and we never truly know any human. And I think it is that hubris of, oh, I know them, that leads to all sorts of sins. But especially as a teacher, it's, oh, I know this child, I know what's going on with them. Or even as a friend, right? You're a bad friend if you're like, okay, I know why they said that. They're jealous. Or what, right? Like the moment we think we know people, it just so easily leads to sin. So that's my non-answer.
Well, wouldn't Alistair McIntyre say that we're storied? Right, we're built into narratives. So obviously, the image, right? We're mirrors of God, right? Images of God. How do we become perfect? Yeah. Was that you die?
That was the question.
Yeah, you die. You die. So, I say, if we say education is about what truth and beauty and wisdom, I say the purpose of education is to prepare our students' souls for death. So you have to die to become perfect.
I disagree. You live to become perfect. Of course, you die to live, but it is the life that makes us perfect, and it is the fullness of life that we're designed for. We're not created for death, we're created for life. It's the fullness of life that we can have, right? It's repentance. How do you become perfect? It's continual, everlasting repentance.
And I'm going to take the middle way, because that's what I do. I think it's both. It is life, but it is preparing ourselves in life to meet eternity as well too. I think it's both and.
Given that life is preparation for death, or education is preparation for death, and that we have to live, and we're going to go in the middle, and we live to die and die to live, he that is dead is freed from sin. What books should every classical K-12 graduate have read?
Should every graduate read? Dante. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Right.
You don't think we should leave the kids in hell?
If you're going to pick one, let it be Paradiso. But yeah, I think the non-negotiable is Dante.
Do you agree?
Yes, I think I agree. That's the first thing that came to my mind, but I was trying to think of something else because I knew that's what Kristen was going to say.
So then it can't be right.
There's only one book that everybody...
Definitely Dante. Yeah, Dante. I guess, I mean, he wants us to say Homer, but Virgil?
Not Virgil over Homer.
No, but Dante for sure. But so, yeah, I mean,
Well, the question is what books?
Okay.
Books. Perhaps with my accent, I didn't emphasize the s.
Inferno, Purgatorio, Paradiso.
Okay.
I mean, we all say the same things, right? Homer, Virgil, Dante, Shakespeare, Milton. Like, we say the same things. Tolkien, Lewis.
I'm going to say another one that nobody knows about because I'm writing a dissertation on him, and I'm going to make, not me personally, but I'm going to help make John Amos Comenius great again. And he wrote an allegory called The Labyrinth of the World and The Paradise of the Heart, which was 55 years before Pilgrim's Progress. And it really is, it's an allegory, a metaphor of how to heal the world. And it's this whole living, how do you live in death and life? It's putting the two worlds together. So I think more American English-speaking students should read this allegory that all Czech students read.
And it's John Amos Comenius?
John or Jan
Jan?
Amos Kominski, but John Amos Comenius, yes.
I mean, this question, there's such a long list that's kind
But
of
it's
canon you
everyone.
can
This is
just
for
pull from.
everyone.
Everyone should read The Republic. Did he fall or? Hi, buddy.
I'll get him.
Everyone should read The Republic. Everyone should read some Thomas Aquinas. Everyone should read some Aristotle.
What happens at CIRCE is broadcast everywhere.
Boethius. Oliver down here. Shakespeare, of course. I mean, right, Augustine. Like it feels silly to name the list because there's already such a canon. Hi. So yeah, I think we've said it.
Okay, I will say one of my favorite things I did with my son is his senior year, we read Nicomachean Ethics very slowly. And while we were reading Nicomachean Ethics, I realized that he had never read Where the Red Fern Grows. So I was like, oh, okay, you have to read this. So I hand it to him and I say, this is a book about a boy and his two dogs. You're going to love it. That's literally what I did. And then Mary Judah said she had never read it, so I sent her a copy. She read it in one day and was like, why did you do this to me? But we paired those two books together. It's one of the favorite things I've ever done. We paired those two books together, and he wrote like his fall paper on it. And I think everyone should read Nicomachean Ethics because you should learn what it means to be a virtuous human and to carry that with you. But you should also have everyone read Where the Red Fern Grows, because if you're not scarring them, then what are we even doing?
Something's got to stick, right?
You'll never forget it.
So are we just adding our books to the great books list? Because
Well-
it's like, okay, all the great books.
If you
the
believe
Bible.
that if you believe that every classical K to 12 graduate should have read it, you can add it. But it's every.
Well, okay, I'm gonna reach out and say it's not on the great books list, but I love Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury. I love it. It just is it's just showing you another way of knowing, and I love that. I also would pair that maybe with Anna Green Gables. I know that seems weird, but Anna Green Gables, she lived in poetic knowledge, I think. I think it's a great book to show that. And it's not just for girls.
I did forget to add younger years. I was thinking about the upper school and fairy tales, right? Everyone needs to always be reading fairy tales.
There's no math in what you guys have said.
It's probably there somewhere.
You wouldn't include Euclid?
Sure. I need to read Euclid.
Yeah, it's not a quick read. In fact, Katerina talked about the great book set. When I was about 19 years old, my stepmother had it. So I decided I was going to read the whole set. I was 19, I had nothing but time, right? So I like math, so I pulled down Euclid. And I read the first sentence, which says, a point is that which has no part. And I said, what? And I closed the book, and I put it back on the shelf, and that ended my attempt to read all 52 volumes of the great books. But I regret not having read it. But 5 years later, I did come to understand what it meant, and it was life-transforming in a very, very, very deep sense. Well, okay, so another question for you, since you brought up Aristotle. Aristotle stresses the need to live a good life, that merely contemplating and philosophizing, do you like the way I said that, is insufficient. Likewise, we must live in the world, and the world needs nurses, trades, etc. How do you incorporate practical knowledge? I should emphasize that practical is put in quotes. How do you incorporate practical knowledge such as these into classical education to prepare students to live a good life virtuously and career-wise?
If we reverse the way we normally think about school and we have our extracurriculars, which are really focused on the true, good, and beautiful, but because, you know, it's like poetry and theater and art, those should be bigger. If we reverse that and we have more practical, trade-specific studies be the extracurriculars, that's great. No problem. If we're truly focusing on the true, good, and beautiful, if we're really giving a classical education from, honestly, like 2-3 hours a day would be sufficient if it were real, then there's plenty of time to play and explore. And that's what will happen. The student who's really, truly classically educated will be curious, and they'll go out and they'll explore and they'll learn things, and then they will gain that practical knowledge. It's a false dichotomy. It just all is.
I think that we have to, again, go back to the purpose of education. And if we consider the purpose of education, which includes, you know, virtue, I would say knowing yourself, knowing how to rule yourself, and actually, this is what Comenius said, knowing yourself, ruling yourself, and then knowing your relationship to God and directing yourself towards Him. And so if you're doing those things, and that goes to, you know, as a Christian, you know, the great commandment, love the Lord your God with your heart, soul, mind, strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. When you're doing those things, and part of that is loving God, knowing who you are in respect to Him, and then loving your neighbor. When you do those things and you're doing them well, hopefully you know, the effect of that is that you are going to be finding out who you really are. What is it that you have a propensity to do? What are you curious about? What do you love? And you can work on those practical things because it's who God made you. And it's aligning with His purpose for you. And Aristotle talks about, you know, he has 5 kinds of knowledge: scientific knowledge, techne, the skills, and prudence. That is right. And he has, but really, knowing those things and virtue and knowing who you are and your relationship to others and how to work in that is the true thing to happiness. So I think, and we don't mean happy as in getting all the things that you want. It's that happiness is really living in the purpose that you were created to live in. And as a Christian, I think that's an image of God and who he made you.
Well, and I just think, we have the liberal arts and we have the fine arts and we have the common arts. And I feel like the common arts gets overlooked a lot in classical education. We focus a lot on the fine arts and the liberal arts. I mean, Chris Hall's like, he's our best resource for this, right? But you can't have common arts without the liberal arts. You can't do architecture without mathematics. I mean, so they do go hand in hand. And, focusing on them won't take that long. And, living in the world requires all three. So.
It does, doesn't it? Are there any questions that people have written that we need to pick up? You have one? Hello? You want to just do it with the mic?
Hello. It just occurred to me, although I'm in a liberal arts program, I don't know what the word liberal means in liberal arts. So could you tell me what it means?
That is a great question. And we actually get a lot of questions about liberal arts at the school that I helped found. It's in Northwest Arkansas. So when you say the word liberal, they think politics. And so it's not that. But liberal just meaning free, freeing, being free to know and to live. I think it goes back to what we were just saying, to live according to your purpose.
In the tradition, when the term was first used, or traditionally used, it referred to the free people, meaning you weren't paid to do this labor. If you were paid to do something, then you were considered slave. And so it was the idea that you're seeking knowledge, you're seeking wisdom, you're seeking virtue to then pour into the community, to pour into your family, to uphold society, to uphold culture, not to get paid.
You're otherwise occupied?
She agrees.
Any other questions? Yes, okay. I'll go to you and then to you.
Do you believe there are any great books that shouldn't be read at a high school level? That, I don't know, that you can't fully appreciate until you're older?
I think there's some that could be more appreciated at an older age or just more understood. I think it takes some prudence. For example, in the CIRCE apprenticeship program, we are reading through the Phaedrus. And it was not necessarily written for children because it deals with pederasty. And some people may really have a hard time with this book. I mean, people who've been through different traumas and, different even sexual traumas, I would put a warning on it. Not everything should be read by all people all the time, everywhere. So I think you have to have prudence with certain things. Also, something like an epic, it's not that I wouldn't read Homer at a young age. I would read Homer as many times as you can over and over throughout your life, but there's certainly a case to be made that what you get out of Homer, as a senior in high school or in college is going to be different than the stories, that you would hear or what you would pick up on as a fifth grader or a sixth grader reading it. So I would say, don't necessarily wait until your senior year to read the Odyssey. I think it's great to have kind of a sneak peek at what that is, but also don't ignore it again for the rest of your life. I don't like it when schools like, oh yeah, our kids, yeah, they already read Odyssey in in the 7th grade, and I'm like, and they're done. I'm like, do you read the Bible and you're done? Because there's so much more depth to these epics than a 7th grader can pull out at one time.
I think it's like we have all things are permissible, but not everything is beneficial. I think probably by high school, and this again, this is where you have to know your students. You have to know what they can handle. One book that may be completely appropriate for a 10th grader may never be appropriate for another student. This is personal opinion, so this is not, I don't think this is like a carte blanche thing, but I'm really frustrated when I see a lot of more modern novels. Not because there's anything wrong with modern novels, but the content and the despair I see in them, I don't like. Like The Bell Jar, for example. It's a great book. She's an incredible writer. I mean, everyone should read it, but maybe not in high school. I saw a book list for a middle school curriculum for a private progressive school, and all of the books on that curriculum were things like Lord of the Flies, 1984. And I'm like, these are 7th graders. They need to be reading Arthur and Robin Hood. They need to be reading things that are going to instill virtue and, a proper form of what it means to be human. So I don't think that there's anything that's, off limits, but I would just be very careful in how I select things for my students. I wouldn't want to provide them with anything that is going to take them down any kind of dark path. And not to say that you can't read dark books with them. I mean, this is why I always try to, whenever I teach a class, we always read Lewis at the end. I always put a C.S. Lewis book at the end of the curriculum. So I just think it's you have to use your judgment and your discernment.
You don't want a steady diet of dystopian novels, one after the other. That could be a little depressing.
I absolutely agree with that. And we have to use so much judgment and discernment with our students. The only thing I would say is the question asked, are there some books that you can't fully appreciate in high school? And I would say I can't fully appreciate a single great book on the list. So don't be too worried about fully appreciating it. Appreciate it to the capacity that you have, and celebrate that, and then read it again and do better next time, and read it again and do better next time. It's a feast, right? I guess we don't give them good wine. I was going to say we don't withhold good wine from our kids, but we do. I definitely don't give him wine. I wouldn't withhold a good steak from my child just because he can't appreciate it. I just keep giving it to him until one day he learns that that's good food.
I think it's worth mentioning, too, that sometimes you have to read the book the first time so that you can have read it the first time. And then you've kind of cleaned the palate so that you can understand it the third time. It's often that happens. That was a great question. Thank you. You had a question. And then you're next.
Okay, thank you so much. I know you touched on this a little bit about the maths and sciences. It seems like that's something that's not, it doesn't seem like it's super important in classical education. And I have found that the natural sciences not only help to have a job, but just to understand truth from a different angle and how to learn how to think. And I was just wondering why that's something that is so often maybe neglected, or why so many people think it's not important or only important for practical jobs and
It shouldn't be neglected because mathematics and natural philosophy are part of the liberal arts. So I think that's a misunderstanding of what the liberal arts are. Mathematics and geometry and astronomy and music and logic and rhetoric and grammar, those are all 7. Did I get all 7? Those include all of those things. So if there is a classical school that is ignoring those things, I would say it's not truly a classical school, because at least one thing I think we can all agree on with what is classical is that it's the liberal arts. So no, I agree. And those things should be taught, and they should be a part of it. Now, as far as like how we do science, I think there is a difference between natural philosophy and how you think about how do we know things in epistemology that needs to be addressed as well too, versus just technical things. So there's a difference between understanding, science and mathematics in that vein, as opposed to just being able to do a computation or to write a code or use AI, a skill, or computer skills, because those things will not last. Those things technology will reinvent itself, and so we actually need the skills that the liberal arts teaches, which I think is what you're getting at.
I want to answer this from a historical perspective. If we think about the 7 liberal arts and what they are, the first 3, the trivium, are word, and well, we already listed them, but the other 4 are number. So we have word and number, and they're specifically word and number because it was believed that the ordered cosmos was created through word, and number orders it. So the logos, proportion, ratio, all of these things structure a well-ordered cosmos. So the idea was, we live in a beautiful world full of music because that's number in motion, and God has ordained it, created it, sustained it, and in order to know this world, we have to know it through word and number. So students would study the trivium and the quadrivium, the 7 liberal arts. Then, really in the Enlightenment, people stopped believing in that, and they started believing not in a universe that is ordered and beautiful, but in a world that is fractured, that is chaos. And what do you do when you live in just a world that is chaos? You control it. So instead of learning how to enter into the world through number and word, we started learning these discrete subjects that are isolated one from the other, and the goal of them is to exert human will over the material world. And so that's the main issue in classical education. I think the classical education in its current form is so young, ironically, that initially it was like, well, let's do the easy thing and read the great books. And now we have to figure out how to do the hard thing and really figure out how to study the quadrivium well. And the reason we haven't figured it out yet is we have to completely transform the way we see the entire cosmos. We have to renew it to a Christian concept. And that it's transforming education from the inside out, and it's hard work.
And I feel bad because I made a math joke earlier and I actually don't really mean it. I actually love math. I didn't when I was a kid. I think one of the problems, too, is I think you're right about the renewal being new. And so much STEM has taken over so much of traditional education. It feels almost like a pushback against that in some ways. But Andrew, I asked you about this years ago. You probably don't even remember this, about kind of a similar question, like why do we so focus on the trivium when we have much less to know? We don't talk about the quadrivium as much. And one of the things that you said, I don't know if you would still agree with this, but you said that one of our problems in our society is that we don't know how to communicate with each other. And if we can't communicate, then we're done. So I don't know if you would still agree with that. It was something along those lines. But I think, too, a lot of us aren't as well versed in it. I think a lot of us are drawn to this kind of education because we really like to read. And we're not that great at how to do the quadrivium well. And the way that it's taught in regular schools, traditional schools, is not necessarily how we would do it. And a lot of us just don't know how. What does that look like? What does that mean? And one thing we desperately need is people who are versed in those things, especially with science, is how do we do that well classically? I think a lot of us just don't know yet, but I think it is coming. I think that's going to be one of the next big things that we have to focus on.
You're talking about last year? Are you talking about last year's? Yeah, there was, for those of you who didn't know about it, last year we had a whole weekend conference about the quadrivium and how to bring it back in. It was wonderful. You'll be after, let's see, you're next, and then you, if we have time. So you guys have to hurry for his sake.
Well, your son has figured out the problem because he's discovering number. He's taken my coffee cup and, yeah, no. He's discovered there's one and then there's two that are like the same. So he's definitely discovered what a one is because he's discovered the first number is actually two. No, two. No, two. I'm just picking a fight at this point. Okay. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I wondered what you think, in addition to the quadrivium, what you think the role of gymnastic education is in all of this. You know, you're talking a lot about books and math, but like, what about the body? Is that classical, and what is classical education? But that's secondary.
Kristen start with this one because she's itching, and I know why.
2 reasons. One, I was an athlete, varsity athlete, all 4 years of high school. Major athlete now. Major role. Education begins in piety and movement. The first thing we do is learn to move, which we also learn about physics at the same time. So my son is a ballet dancer. He's going to be a professional ballet dancer. So most of his day is taken up with movement. So it's really important in my family, physical education. And we do neglect that in classical education too. So I think it's really important that we focus on that because we are embodied people. We have bodies, we have to live in them well. And if we neglect that, then we're doing it to our own detriment.
So gymnastics and music are actually the first, the kind of the roots. It's where piety is kind of rooted and born and governing your body and your soul. And that's those were the beginnings of education in order to be able to know and you know, all the other things with your mind. You had to first be able to rule your body and love the things that were worth loving with your soul. So those were kind of the basics. So you can't ignore gymnastics or music.
I agree.
Agree. She agrees.
We really have to do away with the stereotype of like the dumb jock, right, and the smart nerd. Like, you know, we need both. We need to be both. So.
I might even mention that in the ancient world, gymnastic included diet. So it had to do with the overall health of the body. You were up.
Hi, thank you so much. I was wondering, what are cornerstone skills for teaching specific to classical education?
What do you mean by cornerstone skills?
Like ones that are the building blocks for everything else, ones that you will always need forever teaching.
So for teaching or for learning?
Teaching.
Like, so as teachers, what do we need?
As teachers, yes.
Love. I say that flippantly, but a discernment. I mean, like these are not. I mean, I can't give you like, here's your skill. Go, you know. Discernment, love. I mean, really, you have to love your students. I've gotten into arguments with people about this. You can't teach well if you don't love them, and you have to have discernment to know what's appropriate. Prudence, you know, the virtues, to know what's the right thing to do at the right time, to know when you're doing the right thing, when what's working is working and when it's not. You have to know what you're teaching and how to teach it properly. If you don't know that, then you're not going to be able to teach anything. You teach it wrong, and then you'll figure it out and put more salt in it and get back to teaching it correctly.
I agree. Eric was talking about virtue, and I think virtue is a skill. It's things that we do. Teachers have to be virtuous themselves first. And then there are other skills. You hope they can read and write and things like that. But even before that, and I think it comes back to loving the things that are worth loving and loving virtue and being able to embody that virtue so that you are worth imitating by your students. If you're not worth imitating by your students, then you're not a teacher. Or I guess you're teaching something, but not virtue.
Yeah, that's the hard part, right? In terms of skills that are not exclusive to teaching, you need to learn to be a good listener. You can practice that all the time, right? And you need to be good at asking questions. So just like record yourself in conversations with friends. I know that sounds really weird, but if you genuinely want to be a good teacher, ask them, of course, beforehand. It's illegal to record someone without telling them. But, just say, like, I'm going to record our conversations because I want to listen back and see how much talking I do. I want to see if I'm good at asking questions, and really criticize yourself. Ask your friends, like, hey, do you think that do you feel heard? Do you feel seen? Things like that. That's a really good way to start now before you are a professional teacher. So asking good questions and learning to listen well are absolutely core to any good teacher. And then clarity of thought. So start asking yourself the question, what do I mean by that? Every time you have a thought, just sit there with yourself. What do I mean by that? If you can sit there with a journal and write down a thought, and then what do I mean by that? And just train of thought, just keep going. And then it's teacher specific. You should learn Socratic teaching and mimetic teaching. And CIRCE has trainings on that. You can find those other places as well. But if you want to be a really excellent classical educator, I think you should be well versed in both mimetic and Socratic teaching.
I ditto that. What were you going to say that? So there's this really great book out on that as well. It's called The Good Teacher. And Carrie even wrote part of it. So yeah, read her book.
Well, I was going to say, even before skills or techniques of a teacher, there's principles, things that we need to look at first. And yeah, shameless book plug, but there are some great principles to learn about what it takes to be a good teacher to think about. And some of the things are things that you mentioned, part of that, mimetic teaching, which you're focusing on much, not many, and making hay slowly, and repetition. Singing and chanting, those are all good practices and principles. Those are all good principles to practice to be a good teacher.
Does that answer your question? You feel like that answers that well, or were you looking for something like another type of skill? Okay.
Thank you. Would you mind passing it down?
Hello, I just wanted to ask about technology and what do you think the limit should be, or especially with the classical education, what should you take as a benefit from it, and what's a danger from it that you should limit?
I've been thinking about this a lot because I read a study 2 days ago that showed that the generation, what's the current Generation Z, the little guys, is that what they're called? Alpha. Oh, wait, no, it might be y'all. It might be the one, what are you guys? Okay, Gen Z. Overall, it's not you guys. Overall, Gen Z has a lower IQ than millennials for the first time in history. Every other time, the next generation has been smarter than their parents, like me and my father over there, you'll notice. Just kidding. But we are now seeing this decline, and the common factor is the inclusion of technology in schools. It's a direct relationship. Of course, correlation is not causation, but there are enough factors that do show that there is a very highly probable correlation here. And I think that it's terrifying because a lot of classical homeschoolers especially, but a lot of classical schools incorporate technology. And what they found, the study proposes that it's actually the human body. We have to be, it says we were evolved this way. I'd say we were created this way. We have to learn in community. We have to learn from one person physically showing up. It's bodily. Classical education must be bodily. I don't think it's classical education if it's happening through a screen. I will go so far as to say that. I think that if we are going to save the minds of our children, we must insist on no technology within the classroom.
So I teach on a screen all the time. Yeah, no, and this is a really big deal. And so that's one of the challenges, right? I teach a lot of kids who don't have other options. They don't, that's what they have. And we've all been through COVID time and learned how horrible that was. So I do my best to make it as embodied as humanly possible. So I encourage I make them read books, I make them print things out, I make them mark by hand, I have them write by hand, I have them do exercises by hand. So I do as much as humanly possible to make that as embodied as it can be. I saw a study recently that said that children entering kindergarten and preschool this year don't know how to turn pages on a book because all they can do is swipe. Kids entering medical school cannot do sutures because they don't have the fine motor skills to do that. So we are losing our ability to be human. I have very strong AI policies. I'm very against AI. It is outright plagiarism. It should not be used ever. I don't allow my students to use it for anything at all. If they use it, I fail them. I consider it a form of cheating, and it will get them dismissed from my services. And I include that for research, thinking, note-taking, none of it. It's absolute outright plagiarism. I don't have any strong feelings about that at all. But technology is, and all the studies show we learn better when we write by hand. We learn better when we read physical books. I mean, the studies are out there that show this. I would be very wary of classical schools that are putting technology as like a technology-forward thing for their school. I mean, we can't avoid it. There's some good uses of it. Some people would say it's not neutral, that it is evil. I don't know that I would go that far. But yeah, the more we can be embodied, the better we will be able to educate and become human.
So I'll just push back just a tiny bit because
All right, we'll end with that.
Socrates thought that, anything that you wrote down that was like a technology for him that he didn't really approve of. So, the CIRCE apprenticeship uses technology when we can't be together, but I would much rather be together. And everyone, I think we found that out in COVID. So again, I think the middle way is you have to use prudence, you do the best that you can. We also live in this world and have to flourish in this world. And so, we have to look at, things that seem crazy technology now are not necessarily going to be crazy technology in 10 years. Just like Socrates and writing.
I have one more question, and then we'll wrap it up.
I was just wondering about your views on teaching classical education in like private school versus teaching classical education in homeschool or online school, because two of you mentioned you homeschooled and taught online, and I know some people who homeschool, they just do online. So
I think that's a great question. I've done both, and I found as a classical educator at home, I felt like I could actually embody the vision of classical education better than in a traditional classical school, because most classical school, brick and mortar schools, you're part of an institution that has to align with certain standards and misunderstandings of education. So I was more free at home to address the needs of my particular students, my children, and even tutoring a small class who were alongside us in that journey. It was a lot easier to address that. So I personally, I think it's a challenge to actually do real classical and then we have to define what is classical education, really. But institutions are institutions, and so there's issues like that. One room schoolhouse. Can we do a better job there? Where you have mixed grades. I agree with Andrew, not having grade levels and not having all the standardized assessments and things, I think we would do better in many ways at really addressing the personal needs of our students. But really that one-room schoolhouse almost looks like a homeschool in a lot of ways. So.
I mean, I'm a homeschooler. I teach online. I meant to say this with the technology question. I will not teach online to any student younger than 6th grade. I won't do it, like, at all. I've refused people who wanted me to teach their elementary school kids, because kids, I just don't think they should be on the computer like that. You have to do what's best. I mean, I chose to homeschool because I thought that was the best option for us. Also, we were poor. So, didn't want to send my kids to public school, so we chose to homeschool. I'm a huge advocate of homeschooling. If you have any thought that you want to homeschool your kids, then I say do it and get as much help as you can. But not everyone can do that for many, many reasons. So if you want to, I feel like, if we are sending kids to classical schools, then that's better than many other alternatives. I mean, what am I going to do? I don't have kids anymore. I can teach online, or I can go teach in a school. Like, grandkids, homeschool the grandkids. But
awesome.
Yeah.
I just think, just really quick, we have a lot to learn, I think, from homeschool for classical, the institution. I think we can play nicely together, and there's a lot to learn there.
I was homeschooled classically for a long time and also went to classical schools. And it was a very different experience for both, and I think very wonderful in different ways. And I don't want to say, it's one particular experience, anecdotal evidence, whatever, but for what it's worth, I'm very strongly confident that both of them can be really excellent forms of classical education. It's just about a teacher who's willing to struggle through the hard and students who are willing to put in the work. I mean, whether you're at home or school, I don't think it really matters.
Good answer.
Just a thought principle that might apply both to that question and the technology question. When I was a kid, we had, how many of you have ever heard of a slide rule? Those were just going out when I was in middle school. So they had this new thing. I couldn't believe it. It was a calculator. You ever see a calculator? Well, here's what I noticed. Kids who used calculators never, ever, ever were interested in drilling again. They never wanted to practice again. And and because of that, they never experienced the joy of numbers dancing in their head. They never could quickly calculate what happens if you cube the number 22, each of the digits, and then add them together and then multiply them, add them against each other and then cube the result. And then you find these magical solutions. If anybody here hates math, I have two things for you to do. Write the numbers 1 to 9 across a sheet of paper, and then multiply each one by 9, and then whatever the product is, add it together. Some of you already know what's the answer. It's always 9, okay. But what happens if you do 8? Has anybody ever checked that? What happens if you do 7? Okay, do that for all the numbers from 9 to 1, and you will fall in love with numbers. If that doesn't work, then take any number, cube the digits. In other words, if the number is 22, you cube 2, which is 8. You cube 2 again, which is 8 again, so now you have 16. Okay, now you take 1, which cubed is 1. You take 6, which cubed is, anybody know? It's 216. Okay, so you add 216 plus 1, you have 217. Then you add 2 cubed is 8, plus 1 cubed is 1, plus 7 cubed is 343. You add that up, you got 351. Do that again. You have 1 cubed is 1, 5 cubed is 125, 3 cubed is 27. It's 153. So what do you think happens now? Anybody catch it? We're stuck. Now go read John 21 and tell me you don't fall in love with numbers. Okay, everybody got that? Okay, so if you don't love math, it's because of how you were taught, or it's because you never got to dance with the numbers. The calculator prevents kids from dancing with numbers. And you should not use a calculator until you absolutely need one for logarithms or calculus or something like that. And here's why. The pleasure, you'll lose the pleasure, but why? Because it's about virtue. Virtue, if nothing else, virtue is human excellence. It's you becoming what you're supposed to be. It's you becoming the potential that God spoke into you. And if you have to lean on if you can lean on the technology to do something, then you won't develop the virtue required to do it. You will become weaker within yourself. You will lose self-respect, and you will lose your relationship to the world you were created to take care of. Use technology when you need it. Use technology wisely, but always prioritize cultivating the virtue within yourself and cultivating the virtue of your students. We believe at CIRCE that classical education is the cultivation of wisdom and virtue. And with that, let's hear it for the panel. Thank you so much. I found that informative and inspiring, so I'm grateful. And thank you all for being here. Thank you for sticking it out, even though you're about to get an instantaneous 12 inches of snow in the next 5 minutes. But get home quickly tonight. Are any of you having to fly tomorrow? If you are, forget it. But thank you so much for being here, and come back next time. God bless you. And may the Lord remember you in his kingdom. When are you flying? Tonight. Okay, good. Do you have to run? You what? Oh, okay. Okay. What needs to be done here? Okay. Okay. Was I supposed to let you end it? Hey, goodbyes.